Podcast. Thank you so very much for being one of my guests.
Thank you
Uh,
for having me. I'm pretty excited to be here.
Absolutely. It's wonderful. I love what you do as far as helping students with basically affording college and everything. So I want you to start us off, please, by telling us who you are and what you do.
My name's Elaine Rubin, and I'm the Director of Corporate Communications at Edvisors. At Edvisors, we help students and families plan and pay for college. So I've been with Edvisors for about almost 4 years now, and we put out a lot of information through our website and on YouTube as well to help people with some of those tough questions to help them through.
Great, that's fabulous. So can you tell me a little bit more specific about do you deal with student loans? Do you deal with financial aid packages as a whole? How does that work with you?
So we help students with just about everything. Every year we put out a FAFSA guide to help people through the FAFSA application. There's always a little bit of fear and hesitation every October 1st when the new FAFSA comes out. We also help with different types of solutions to help you pay from college and also letting you know what they are, what they mean, how they work. Everything from student loans to scholarships. We actually also give away scholarships through our scholarshippoints.com website that we have. And then also we help people after the fact with repayment. So we help you understand how to deal with student loans, how to pay them efficiently, and look at some of your options to make it work in your budget.
Oh, that's absolutely fabulous because with over $1 trillion in student debt, that is something that is absolutely 100% needed for these students out there. I think a lot of students just don't understand student loans as well as they should. So then they get themselves into debt and they're like, what do I do? So they have people like yourself to help them out. That's wonderful.
We try to avoid the problem, but sometimes you get in it and you're not exactly sure what you ended up with, or life happens and they become unaffordable. So we definitely want to be there to help them through that as well. Unfortunately, paying for college doesn't always end when you graduate. It can extend on for several years.
Yes, absolutely. So along that vein, what do you think the most crucial kind of like miss the mark moments are for students when it comes to financial aid? What do they do where it's just kind of like, ooh, I missed the mark on that one?
So there are a few mistakes I see happen quite a bit. One is deadlines, not understanding what your deadlines are, when you should be applying for financial aid. Like I mentioned in the intro a little bit about the FAFSA of what we do is every October 1st, that FAFSA comes out, and sometimes people put off what they're scared of. They've heard it's overwhelming, they heard it's difficult, or maybe last year it didn't go as smoothly as they would have liked. And you kind of put it off. And if you miss some deadlines, because the FAFSA is not just used by your school or to award federal financial aid, it's also used by states. And some state deadlines are first come, first serve. So on that October 1st day, we always try to push that type of deadline understanding, because it's really, really important to not miss them. And also sometimes financial aid is something that could be happening around or even before you start applying to college. So you kind of aren't in that mindset yet, especially for those students who are first going to school. So it's always important to keep financial aid top of mind, have those conversations with your parents, get ready to fill out the FAFSA on October 1st, and don't put it off because it seems overwhelming. I always recommend people get started, jump in. You can always save the application if you hit a roadblock, and work through that obstacle as soon as possible instead of waiting until the night before. I've had a lot of students do that. And then they end up missing some deadlines for scholarships through their school, or they miss out on some state aid. So just keeping in mind those deadlines and not to get too overwhelmed with different types of financial aid applications out there.
I think that's incredibly important. And I would say, in fact, in the past, I want to say maybe 10 years or so, it's become even easier to meet those deadlines as well. Because for me, when I was in college, first of all, it was still paper, the old-fashioned paper application. But number two, we had to have the current year's tax information. So I automatically had like a 2-3 month gap because I had to wait from the W-2s from my mom and myself, at least for my sophomore year. I did it on my own thereafter, but oh my gosh. And just waiting for that just drove me nuts because I'm like, everybody else is probably getting stuff in and getting their scholarships. And what am I going to do?
Yeah, so that is a really good point. Actually, the FAFSA has gotten so much easier. I've actually gone as far as calling it not your parents' FAFSA because I was in the days of the paper FAFSA as well. And in all honesty, you can complete it on the web. You can complete it on a mobile app these days as well. And parents can do that as well. So it's a little bit easier. And actually the FAFSA has gotten easier in the way that there's some skip logic in there. And what that essentially means, as you answer questions, ones that no longer apply to you or no longer asked, and there is a way to import information directly from the IRS, which is a little bit easier than trying to figure out which line of your tax returns and information to put in and being confused about that whole process. It's gotten a little bit easier. And that's one of the reasons I tell people to jump right in first. Start answering the questions. You need to answer the questions honestly anyways, because a lot of people will ask me, what can I do to change some of my income? And I'm like, it's as you reported it to the IRS and some of the other information in there and assets. And some people do have some methods, but in all honesty, if you have to report assets anyways, because there are income cutoffs for that as well, chances are, the need-based aid you're looking for probably isn't going to be coming from your federal source. Could still come from your school or your state, but with the federal, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think a lot of people, they overestimate what they can get in terms of financial aid in some cases, but a lot of them underestimate from what I'm seeing too. They think, just because, my parents are fairly well-to-do, I'm not going to get any financial aid. Well, you do have, you may not get the exact financial aid you wanted, but you're going to get something. So you might as well take your chances and roll the dice and fill it out. There's so many people who I've heard will not fill out the FAFSA because they're like, I'm not going to get any aid anyway.
Yeah, and that is one of the myths we try to dispel every year. And you want to look at your school's policies. Some schools won't even give away merit aid without the completion of the FAFSA. So they're not looking at the information for need-based purposes. They're just looking at it to get you almost in the system. So you're considered by financial aid to give additional assistance to or help or even receive merit aid. And every school is different and how they do it. In the media, it's been out there a lot. Sticker price is not always what people are paying. It can be even as low as 60% as the sticker price that you're seeing after you complete all the forms. And also with that, if you're already on your school's website, double check if they have a scholarship application they want you to complete separately, if they have a CSS profile, any of that is helpful. And those may come with their own deadlines as well beyond whatever the FAFSA is. So get those in because, if you don't put your name at all in the mix, you're not going to get financial aid to help you out.
Right. You can't win the game if you're not playing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. So, next question for you. What do you think every first-generation college student should be thinking about when it comes to their college education and paying for it?
Okay, so this question I always like because I'm also a first generation college student and graduate. So I've done it, I figured it out. And on top of that, my mother is not from this country. So she didn't go through the US process of paying for college in the FAFSA. So it was a learning curve all around. I would say for a first generation student, even if your parents are there to 100% support you, they may not have all the answers for you just because they didn't go through it. Find some resources. If you have resources at your high school, through your community at libraries, if there's some resources being available at local community colleges, find ways to reach out to people who understand the system. Find great resources like Edvisors.com. I had to because, one thing we actually do offer is a way for people to ask questions directly to us if they get stuck, and we can help guide them in the right direction on our site. But look for those resources to help you through. People who know how it works will be able to guide you and help you through. And if you're really interested in a particular college that you really want to attend, there's no reason you can't try to reach out to financial aid or some of their admissions counselors to see if they have some time to talk to you and let you know what you need to do and what you need to complete. But I guess the bottom line is look for those mentors everywhere. Even social media will have a lot of groups. I think, Renee, you and I both connected on a social media group that helps people plan and pay for college as well. And they ask a lot of questions there, but there are a lot of places you can go that are free that will give you some guidance to help you through. And if you're able, there's obviously some college counselors and college admissions counselors that, do that as a business and they can help you through. But if you're looking for free options, there are definitely a lot of them out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of websites where you can just look for scholarships too, like My Scholarly and FastWeb and things like that. There's some really great resources in addition to what you guys do too, which is, top notch and wonderful. So that's great. I think and the other thing I think a lot of students don't realize, and you tell me because you're working with them every day on this particular topic, I don't think a lot of students realize that they can appeal their EFC with their university.
Yeah, they can. It's a top question for us. I know people look for it because they get that expected family contribution on their FAFSA and they're thinking, no way. There's absolutely no way that this is what my family can contribute. And there's a lot of confusion around that number too. So I'm glad you brought that number up because people think that's exactly what they will pay. And that's not true. That's not true in the way that you couldn't owe more because that happens a lot. And that's not true in the way that your school can't award you to the point where you don't have anything to pay. So that number is just more of an index type of number. But schools do use it to help award financial aid. And if you don't agree with it or something's happened, like, I don't know, a COVID-19 pandemic that took over and have many families are affected financially from that pandemic. A lot of things have happened from the time your parents filed the taxes, then completed that information from 2 years ago. A lot of things could have happened and you can appeal your financial aid decision. Now, ultimately, it's going to be your school's choice to approve it or make adjustments to it, but you do have the option to appeal. And along, like with the advice we talked about before, if you don't, even let them know you're not going to be able to meet your EFC, stuff has changed, then nothing will happen. So you do have to take the step and complete a financial aid appeal. A lot of schools will have appeal forms that you can complete online or submit through a portal, or they'll at least give you the guidelines and the steps you need to take right on their website. So it's always good to double check. If you're one of their first-time students, you can actually appeal with every school that you're applying to if you haven't made your decision yet and you already got your financial aid letter. So you do have the option to do that to see if adjustments can be made. And because it's a school determination, each school could have their own determination on how they're going to handle your situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to financial aid, my biggest piece of advice is nothing ventured, nothing gained. If you don't ask, the answer is always going to be no, and you will never be able to get what you need if you don't put yourself out there and ask. So I always feel like it's very important to be communicative about your financial situation with your institution for that reason.
Exactly. And I would say even with that, if you already know this is going to be a problem, you don't need to wait until 2 weeks before the term starts. Because guess what will happen? You will be on hold. You will not be able to get an appointment if you have to make an appointment in time. So if as soon as you know this is a problem, act immediately. Set up some time with the school. As we know, with the pandemic as well, hours may not be the same. And you might have to be a little bit more patient in working with the staff because we know every industry is being affected by the pandemic. Staffing could be an issue. Hours could be an issue. People falling ill can be an issue. So as soon as you know, if you didn't do it in the past and you waited till the last minute, it worked out, this year, it may not be that simple. So act as soon as you know.
Absolutely. So tell me, what is your favorite I Help the Student story? Tell me about that.
So I have so many stories, and honestly, not all of them have happy endings, but some of them do. One that kind of sticks out in my mind, because, we kind of help people through so much of the process. I've helped people starting at the beginning, trying to make school lists through, trying to understand a financial aid award letter. And one story that really sticks out is I had a situation where essentially a student, it was a US citizen, but had never actually lived on US soil. He lived in a different country. It was a South American country. One parent had dual citizenship and was a US citizen as well, and the other parent did not. And but they mainly lived in a different country. And it was not military or anything like that. It was just the situation they were in. And I helped them complete a FAFSA based on foreign tax returns in a different language all the way through. And it really was an experience that stood out in my mind because for the most part, I tend to help students who are US based and, they file US tax returns and all that. So to kind of work through it with a student that was a US citizen, but happened to live somewhere else internationally, to make sure that they could get the money that they're eligible for in order to go to school. So that was one of my favorite stories. One of my stories that was not my favorite, not one of those happy ending stories, but I think it's always important to kind of point those out as well, is a story where I'd gone out and done one of our financial aid days. It was not a night, it was during the day at a charter school in Massachusetts. And I had a student there, very excited. She had just gone into an HBCU, a dream school of hers. And because we were going at a time, we knew everyone already had applied and they already got their acceptances and denials and had an idea of where they were going. We asked them to bring their financial aid award letters so we could go over them. And this student brought up their financial aid award letter, very excited that they had gone into a dream school. And they said, look, I was awarded financial aid to 100%. Like, I don't have to pay anything. So we take a look at the financial aid award letter. And this is one of those cautionary tales of really, you need to understand what's on that financial aid award letter, because there was a packaged Parent Plus loan on there for $25,000.
Oh.
And the student, which, first time doing this, trying to learn all the lingo in this world of what these different loans mean, didn't quite understand what it was. Unfortunately, it was a family that was a zero EFC family, which is a need-based family, a low-income family. And we had to have a conversation and break down what a Parent Plus loan means, that it is a loan that your parents have to borrow and qualify for. And, I don't have all the history. It was just the student we were talking to. We had a great conversation. It was a little bit of a blow. She was pretty upset, but we talked about solutions of let's take some time to look at scholarships. The school actually that she attended in Massachusetts had some school scholarships for the high school. So we kind of looked through those and set up a plan to start applying to them, because it wasn't completely out of the realm. It was also advice was given to appeal that financial aid award letter. Sure. And to kind of go through and have an understanding that the family couldn't really take on, even though it was 1 year, it was $25,000. If she went for 4 years, that's $100,000 for a low income family to borrow. There is a little bit of that feeling out there. It's federal, so it should be fine, but it's still a loan. It's still a student loan, and
it's not.
You do have to be smart. Yes. Well. That's in
the most circumstances.
Yeah, it's difficult to discharge through bankruptcy. You'd have to prove an undue hardship. That can vary on how you would do that. It's not impossible, but it's very hard. But if you're starting out, especially, it's a great time, and it kind of stuck out in my mind to start having those conversations early. This was also a first generation student, so the family didn't really know what they should be talking about, and talking about a family budget of what you can really afford out of pocket. That's a huge conversation to have. And also being enlightened to what these terms mean and the importance of understanding your financial aid award letter. Unfortunately, they are not standard, and they could look different from every school, even if they're giving you the same thing. So that was kind of a takeaway. So I kind of had a happy story and one that wasn't so great, but I think at the end we had a lot of great solutions to help her. And luckily she did have some resources available through her school, and counselors were there to take over from there.
Yeah, no, I mean, what the good part of that story is at least she found out in time and didn't wind up in the whole trap of having a financial aid situation that she was not prepared for. Exactly.
You always want to be prepared.
Yes, absolutely. So tell me, what do you think the financial aid future is? What does that look like in the United States? Do you think that maybe we'll actually get 2-3 years of junior college or community college? Do you think that they'll increase Stafford loans? Do you think that they'll give us an increase in Pell? What do you think it's going to look like?
Okay, so you said 8 minutes, right?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay. So, financial aid is a bit tricky. Congress and the federal government is strongly involved in how federal financial aid works. As you mentioned, some of the things that have been discussed quite a bit, things like double Pell, increasing that federal Pell grant, which is that need-based grant that's offered. Once again, need-based, looking to increasing loan limits have been discussed as well. And then also looking into ways to offer some sort of free college, including maybe junior college or community college for about 2 years. All of them are options. They're out there. They actually are not new discussions, though. I know we've been talking about a little bit more. I think the public is more involved these days in these discussions, but they have been discussed. Ooh, when did I join? Oh, we don't need to date it completely, but let's give it a decade and more. Over a decade, these same conversations have happened over and over again. So I hate to say it, but we will have to wait and see a little bit. I used to actually work for the U.S. Department of Education in the Office of Federal Student Aid. So I will default to my days of, you kind of have to wait until it's signed and finalized before you can really make an assumption of what will happen. And then, some of the major changes in the last few years have been tied to other bills. Like things like the health bill they were tied to with reauthorization. So I can see something happening. One thing we do know that's going to happen is the EFC is getting a much needed overhaul in the next few years. They're actually getting rid of it. They're going with the Student Aid Index. There's talks about it being 2023, but it looks like it might be extended a little bit. We're kind of waiting to see how that lands. But it'll be different. It won't be the same. One of the things about the EFC is it's a bit antiquated on how they calculate it. It hasn't really been changed much. The indexes have been changing a little bit year to year, but overall there haven't been major changes to the EFC. So I've been following that one quickly because that's pretty exciting. Within the next FAFSA cycle, and even now, questions like selective service, the current cycle, they're expecting to still have that selective service question on there for men who have to register for selective service. But they're actually saying, not answering it correctly won't have an effect on your financial aid. And also drug convictions are the first one we're going to see disappear from the FAFSA as well. So those questions will no longer be there. But we'll kind of see. I think the pressure is also on schools now. Conversations have been had of, there is federal financial aid options, there's state options, but the cost of school has also grown exponentially, and it's hard for families to keep up. So there's a lot of pressure on students to make the right decision. And I think the younger generation has taken the older generations, even millennials and such, to understand what can happen if you aren't smart about paying for college. Looking for the big name brand isn't really what that generation really wants to do anymore. They're looking at costs. What will be the cheapest way or the best way for me to get through higher education, to get my degree without taking on mass amount of debt? It seems like there's a new documentary or a new social media story coverage on the crisis of the amount of debt people are in. $1 million borrowers are a thing. So I think there's a lot of pressure on schools. And then also I'm pleased to see that people going through the process now are really being cautious and trying to be smart about their higher education. It is an investment in your future. So if you do have to put down some of your own money or you have to look to borrow, you just want to do it smart. You want to be smart about it. And some of that pressure is on yourself as well, because ultimately you're the one repaying it. So I think that understanding is there. And I'm seeing what I heard when I was going to college, just borrow the money, deal with it later. That mentality is going away. And I'm happy to see that go away. That's a trap I fell into. A little bit of my history is that I didn't exactly know what I was doing when I went to college, and I stumbled upon my career afterwards. And I was like, oh no, why didn't I know any of this before? And I made a career out of it. So, I'm encouraged to see some of that. But we'll have to see with what the federal government comes up with. Right now, they're kind of taking on two sides, the repayment side and looking at student loan forgiveness. And then they're taking on the other side of what to do with some of the federal student aid being offered and what can be done to help students pay for school.
Well, I know the owners of the $1 trillion in student loan debt out there are crossing their fingers on forgiveness for sure. That's That's an amazing amount of money to think about that this country owes to the federal government for student loans. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. What I love about the what you just said too is talking about going back to the evaluation of the EFC in particular. The EFC has never really totally given you a full financial picture of any student. And then on top of that, then you've got these colleges who have been raising their prices. I think it's something like 500% since the 80s. The tuition.
I've seen 300 to 500%, depending on news sources. But yeah, 300 to 500% is
since around the 80s, and that is just like greed, in my opinion, in some respects. That they need the money to do their programs, but do they really need that much? I don't know. I just don't know. And it's kind of been a feedback loop. The government has raised their amount of loans and financial aid to cover it. But in any event, I want to just thank you so very much for taking the time to be here today. I really do appreciate it. And you've given some really great information to the students who are going to be watching this. So, Elaine, thank you so, so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Renee. It's been great.